Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. On behalf of CAAR, I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome you to our May general membership meeting. It's been 2 years since we've been able to have an in-person component of this meeting. I'm so excited to see your faces. And it feels wonderful, and it really makes me happy that we can all get together again. To begin today's meeting, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we will move on to the approval of the minutes from our March 17th meeting. The minutes were included in your handouts. You received them when you signed into the GMM. They were also included in the handouts link you received in your reminder email, and they're also available in the chat box in the Zoom toolbar. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If so, please raise your hand or submit your feedback using the chat box in your Zoom toolbar. Reeves? Oh, okay. Do we have any in the chat? Okay. As there are no corrections or changes, they stand approved as distributed. Thank you. At this time, I would like to acknowledge CAAR's antitrust agreement. This statement ensures that we are encouraging discussions that promote all realtors and does not restrict competition among members or potential members. We work to foster a forum for open discussion of diverse opinions without attempting in any way to encourage or sanction any business practice. The CAAR antitrust statement will be acknowledged at every CAAR meeting. For a full copy of the antitrust statement, please reference today's handouts. We are extremely grateful to our sponsors for stepping up and helping us provide this great program. The presenting sponsor is Virginia Credit Union. Event sponsors are Farm Credit of the Virginias and Virginia Home Picks. We value the professionalism, service, and support of our affiliates to CAAR and its members. If you haven't already visited the sponsor tables in the classroom, please do so on your way out. At this time, I'd like to invite Mark Creason of Virginia Credit Union to share a few words.
State of Virginia, largest state chartered credit union. God, if I wasn't loud enough, this will be worse. I get paid to stand up here and tell you how great we are, so I'm not going to spend my time doing that. So, but I do think we're great. But I tell people, I said, don't take my word for it. Take the 92% of our members who would recommend us to their family and friends. You know, 92% of 300,000 is very strong. And the Gallup Corporation, who does our polling, says it's one of the highest in the country, banking wide. So we would love to have you, come check us out. Our one branch we have in Charlottesville now is about a half a mile from here. We are looking for other locations, so we're growing. I've got John Moderator with me today. John is our mortgage loan officer here. He helps a lot of you every single month, but he's always got time to help some more. So please stop by our booth. Happy to answer any questions for you. He can answer anything mortgage related for you. And appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and John. As the greater Charlottesville area continues to grow and brings more people from all over the country, you can see the impact it has on our roads, highways, and overall transportation in the area. We are joined this morning by 3 guest speakers: Kevin McDermott, the Planning Manager of Albemarle County; Sandy Shackelford, Director of Planning, Transportation of the Thomas Jefferson Planning District; and Sean Tubbs, President of Town Crier Productions. Both Kevin and Sandy will each conduct a presentation before we move into our question and answer portion of the program, where Sean will moderate. Kevin, I'll hand the meeting over to you.
Hi, I'm Kevin McDermott. I'm the planning manager of Albemarle County. Thank you all for having me. I have a lot to get through today, and I have 10 minutes, so I am going to be moving really quick through this stuff. We'll have some time for questions later. I'm going to start by going through some of our process for transportation planning, just to help you all kind of understand the work that we do at Albemarle County. And then I'm going to move into some project updates, just to give you a heads up about things that you'll be seeing on the horizon here in the upcoming years. So to start out, regarding the planning process, so we have a lot of inputs coming at us to try and determine where we need to make improvements in the transportation system. So we work with the Virginia Department of Transportation heavily. Just so you all know, the Virginia DOT actually manages and maintains all of the roads in Albemarle County, just like they do around the state for every county. So cities tend to manage and maintain their own roads, but all the counties are done by the Department of Transportation. They're constantly monitoring the road conditions out there for congestion. We look at all the crashes. We're always watching to see if we see issues popping up in particular places. And we're sitting down and we're trying to talk through those, trying to figure out if there's things we need to address. Also, as Albemarle County staff, we track all the development that comes into Albemarle County. So every time an application comes in to build new homes or to build a new economic development site, we monitor that, we review it, and we find out how that's going to impact the transportation. And then we keep that information available so we can look out to the future and figure out where we need to make those transportation improvements. We also work heavily with the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization. Sandy will get up here in a few minutes and tell you a little bit more about that, but they do run a long-range transportation model, which takes the inputs of all the development going into the region and then tells us where we will probably be seeing future congestion problems in our system. And then finally, we perform work around our comprehensive plan updates, master plans, and corridor plans. A lot of these times we go out into the community, we ask the people that live in those areas what they're seeing and what they think we need to do to make those improvements. And we take all that information and we try and figure out where we need to invest our money and our time to improve the transportation system. Once we get all that information together, we have a list, the project prioritization list of all the projects in Albemarle County. We update that fairly regularly, and we use that list to direct our staff resources and our funding to the highest priority transportation projects. So we look at that huge list and we try and determine, we look at factors like safety, congestion, economic development, accessibility, and land use and environmental impact. And we rank those projects on scores based on data that we pull in for all those factors. I know you can't see a lot of what's on this map, but a few things I want to point out. This is the map of all of those projects. You can see there we have 62 intersection improvements identified and 110 corridor improvements identified. Those are in all the plans across the area. some things that you might want to take a look at from this map is the yellow areas are the development areas in Albemarle County. Those are the areas where we are trying to direct most of the development throughout the county. And you can see that that is where we focus most of our efforts in improving the transportation system. So there's a lot up there right around the city and the areas where we see a lot of development. That's what you're seeing right there. We last updated this in 2019, and we are working on an update right now of that project prioritization list in conjunction with the comprehensive plan update that is underway called Albemarle County 2044. So we have a lot of funding mechanisms, and I'm just going to quickly talk about the big ones. I wanted to start with the ways we get most projects funded. So the developer funded construction and constructed improvements. Most of the roads in Albemarle County are developed by the people that are building the homes. So we don't really do new roads anymore in Albemarle County. When you see all those roads like in Old Trail, in Crozet, or in North Fork up in the northern areas of Albemarle County, Brook Hill developments, those are all being built by the developer. So that's where we get most of our roads built by. Then smart scale and revenue sharing. These are the two primary sources of state funding that we go after. Smart scale is the program in the state that provides most of the money for transportation improvements. It's a competitive grant process, and projects are scored and awarded funding every other year through that. Revenue sharing is a 50-50 match between county and the state, and it's really not as competitive. We can get a lot of money through that, and we can direct it to projects that we really want to accomplish. And then our capital improvement program, of course, that's our local funding that we use to fund a lot of the smaller improvements that you see. Transportation alternatives, secondary 6-year plan funds. These are all smaller opportunities, but I just wanted to make you aware so you know these are out there. State of Good Repair is a state program that looks at improvements in the county that we want to do, like bridges and maintenance. Highway Safety Improvement Program, that's something that looks at high safety projects, so areas where we see lots of crashes, we can get money through HSIP. And then there's other federal state funding opportunities. I'm going to go ahead and move into some project updates now. And what I'm going to do is I'm really going to focus on these projects that are out there that have not started construction, but that we have a lot of funding for. So these are things that you're not seeing on the ground yet, but you might see in the next like 4 years or so under construction. To begin with, out on Route 20 and Route 53, this is over there at the base of Monticello Mountain. We were recently awarded smart scale funding to reconstruct that intersection as a roundabout. So this is sort of turned on its side. What you see here, this is the parking lot for the Monticello trails. This is 53 going up towards Monticello this way. And then this is Route 20, so the city would be going in this way. It's currently a signalized intersection, and we're going to rebuild that as a roundabout. And you're going to notice that we've got a lot of roundabouts coming in the county. We've been building those. We're really big fans of them. They're really efficient. They're really safe. So and they're really pretty. They're pretty cost effective because we don't have to use a lot of right of way to do these things. So I'm going to keep moving and go on to another roundabout that we've got going on. This is out on 5th Street Extended. What you're looking at here, this is the county office building on 5th Street. You can see, of course, I do have a guide there if you want to look at that. And this is 5th Street going into the city. This is Old Lynchburg. Old Lynchburg goes under the highway. And this is Old Lynchburg going south right here. So another location that's currently an unsignalized intersection that we see a lot of congestion at. We've got a lot of development coming on out here, especially with Southwood going on just south of here. So we're going to replace that with a roundabout as well. And that's going to be under construction in the next couple of years. Another roundabout we've got going on. See, I told you, we've got a theme here. So this is out there at John Warner Parkway and Rio Road. You can see John Warner Parkway coming in here from the city. Rio Road, that's going out towards 29, and this is Old Rio Road that goes back down to the city. We've got a big new development going on right here that actually proffered quite a bit of funding to help us build this roundabout. So, yeah, like I said, this is all going to be reconstructed as a roundabout. We see a lot of crashes, a lot of congestion out here right now. And I think we got a couple more roundabouts still coming at you. So you can see I'm a huge fan of these things. And the state is too. They actually give extra points in smart scale for things like roundabouts, for these innovative intersections, as they say. This one is out in Crozet. This is what they call Meacham's Trestle. That's where the railroad goes under or goes over 250. So this is 250, and that's 240 going into Crozet, and this is 250 going back in towards the city. That project is going to be reconstructed as a roundabout as well. Really high safety problem out here. We had a lot of crashes, and we think this roundabout's really going to address that problem. This, I believe, is going to be my final roundabout of the day. This is up there at Berkmar, and if you've been up there in the Hollymead area, you know Hollymead Town Center is down this way, and Berkmar was extended all the way up to Hollymead Town Center. It goes up and then it ends before it gets to Airport Road right now. So what we want to do with this project is extend Berkmar all the way up to Airport Road, put a roundabout in, and then this up here is the is going into the North Fork Research Park, where we've got a lot of new development going into. They're actually coming in for a new residential component of development up in the North Fork area to join with all the commercial and industrial, light industrial they've got going on. And this project is fully funded as well, and that's in design. A couple more projects that I'm going to go through real quick. It looks like I just got a couple minutes, but I think I'm going to be able to get through these. This is going back out to Crozet area. And this is one of the few new roadway projects we have. This is 250. Right here is that Harris Teeter, if you all know where that is, and Corey Farms neighborhood. And this is all the West Hall area. So developers had built what we call Eastern Avenue through the West Hall area, all the way up to Park Ridge and the Glenbrook development. And they ended it right here. And then there's this Licking Hole Creek right through this area. So what we're doing, and we just actually got an announcement a few weeks ago that looks like we're getting about $8.5 million from the state to help us with this, is we're going to extend Eastern Avenue, bridge over Licking Hole Creek, and connect it down to 250. So all these new neighborhoods that you see going in the center area of Crozet, they'll have a new, easier way to get out to the city or to the highway or to the schools. So this is going to help the traffic in that area of Crozet quite a bit. And then I think I just got maybe one or two more projects. These next two go together. This is over in the Pantops area at Route 20 and 250. So this is 250 right here, and this is Route 20 going north out towards Stony Point, and of course then you've got the Food Lion development right over here. This intersection we see a lot of congestion at, of course. This is going to be a standard reconstruction of an intersection where we're adding some lanes, we're adding pedestrian crossings. That's a really important thing out there in Pantops, because we don't have any way to get across 250 for pedestrians right now. And we're going to rebuild that signal there. So we think this is really going to improve that congestion issue out along 250. And in conjunction with that, we've also got we're doing a project all along the corridor at 250, right next to that intersection. That's what you see right there. And all along that corridor, we're going to close that center median, and we're going to direct people to specific turns throughout it. And that's going to really improve on the flow of traffic out there, and also reduce all those crashes. Those center turn lanes, those are really confusing for a lot of people, and we see a lot of crashes along with it. So this is trying to address that problem. And I just wanted to point out that they're not all road projects that we're doing out there. One of the big things that we focus on is also bike ped. So we've got a lot of bike ped projects going on right now, a bunch coming up. This is just a quick list of them. I'm happy to go into more detail if people are interested or want to write me, but I think my time is up. So I'm going to let this go. Bring Sandy up.
Good morning, everyone. So I just want to take a moment while I have this opportunity to share with you a little bit about our organization, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District, and how it is that we support transportation programming and planning throughout the region. We work pretty closely with our localities, so Kevin and I are in pretty close communication regularly to coordinate our planning efforts, as well as with city staff as well. So we consider the work that we do to be pretty collaborative and also to be pretty complementary. We do not do a lot of project implementation, so we are not working with developers directly as the regional body. We're supporting sort of collaboration and planning to identify regional project priorities and working closely to support the initiatives and coordinate with the goals of our localities. So first of all, just for those of you that don't know, planning district commissions are established by the Code of Virginia, and we're really sort of charged with addressing issues that have a broader than local emphasis area. And one of those is certainly transportation. We have 6 member localities, so we cover Albemarle County as well as the City of Charlottesville, Fluvanna, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson County. We have 4 ongoing transportation programs. The first one and the biggest one is the Charlottesville Albemarle Mpo. MPOs are federally mandated for areas that have population densities of, I believe it's at least 50,000. And then we look at the boundaries every 10 years when the new census comes out. So we're going to be looking at reevaluating our boundaries now that we have the new census data and some new rulemaking from the Census Bureau. But currently, the MPO area includes Charlottesville and the urbanized portions of Albemarle County. For all those areas that are outside of the MPO boundaries, we also operate a rural transportation program, which helps support planning and provides technical support for our rural localities. We have a regional transit partnership, which is really intended to be a collaborative forum to bring, for those of you that don't know, we have 3 different transit agencies within our region. So this is an opportunity to bring all of those stakeholders together, make sure everybody is coordinating and communicating, and that we're making sure that we're providing transit services as efficiently and as effectively as possible for the region. And then we also operate our Rideshare Program, which is an ongoing program to basically reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles, specifically for commuters. So I'll go through. You're going to see less pictures from me, less roundabouts, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about our regional priorities and what we're doing to coordinate and consider transportation planning throughout our region. I'll start with the MPO. One thing that we did, Kevin covered the smart scale process. So MPOs as a regional body are also eligible to submit projects through smart scale. So that's helpful for us to be able to try to leverage as much funding as possible to our region. One thing that we did a little bit differently this upcoming round of smart scale than we've done in the past is we really put a lot of resources into doing some public engagement around one of the projects that was identified as being a really high priority for the area, which is a bicycle and pedestrian crossing across the Ravenna River between Handtops and Woolen Mills. So we assembled a stakeholder advisory committee. We asked them a lot of questions. We talked about a lot of the considerations that they would like to see as decision-making was occurring by the elected officials that would be choosing a project, conducted a lot of public outreach and surveys and things like that. And we were able to take that information to the policy board, which is the decision-making body for the MPO, and able to really make sure that they understood what all of the considerations needed to be before they selected which of those projects or alignments can move forward. We've been working really closely with Albemarle County and Greene County, as well as the State Department of Transportation on a North 29 corridor study, where we're evaluating intersections between Airport Road going into Ruckersville and Greene County, looking at where there are performance issues, so where there are high levels of congestion as well as safety concerns, and working with consultants to develop potential recommendations that could help address some of those concerns to improve travel throughout that area. And then we do other things that are identified as priorities by our stakeholders. The Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration provide 80% of our funding. And every so often they will send us information on planning emphasis areas, which are areas that they would like to see MPOs provide planning resources to address. So one of the ones that we've been working on this most recent year has been climate action, because that continues to be a higher and higher priority for transportation system considerations. Going into our next fiscal year, which will start in July, as Kevin mentioned, one of the big things that we're going to be undertaking is our 5-year update of the 2050 long-range transportation plan. This plan has to be updated every 5 years, and we're going to be looking at the entire regional transportation system, evaluating existing operations, as well as using a future projected year of 2050 to look at what we anticipate conditions will be like if no improvements are implemented beyond what has already been funded. So we use population projections, we use a travel demand model, which it's a little bit more technical than I'll be able to explain, but really smart people put all this information into the model. It lets us know what we think the system performance will be like, and helps us identify where it is that we need to focus our limited transportation dollar funding resources in order to improve the system. And then we also work on other identified priorities. So one of them that we're looking at is continuing to help consider bicycle and pedestrian planning from a more regional perspective, coordinating with not just the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, but also UVA. In our rural transportation program, a lot of what we do is provide technical support for rural localities in order to help them increase their staff capacity. A lot of those staffs are much smaller and don't have specialized planning staff to focus on transportation. So it's an opportunity for us to expand their resources and better leverage opportunities. We've been working with Fluvanna and Louisa County on a Zion Crossroads Gateway plan to identify both transportation improvements specifically, as well as to also think about how they can develop more of a sense of community in the Zion Crossroads area. And we've also been working with Standardsville and Scottsville, the towns of Standardsville and Scottsville, to conduct a bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, so they can know what is the status of our current infrastructure, where do we need to maybe start thinking about investing in maintenance or potentially replacement of some of our facilities, and where can we expand to better connect our existing networks. And then we also do a lot of technical support for grant applications for the localities. So in some cases, we actually prepare grant applications or help provide resources to make sure that they understand what grant opportunities are available. Going into the next fiscal year, one of the things we're looking at is a transit needs assessment in the rural areas. So looking at what are the existing transit services that are provided and what are the opportunities to maybe enhance or improve those. And I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the major initiatives that we're looking forward to with transit here in the next slide. And then we're also going to go through a bicycle and pedestrian plan that was developed for the region in 2019 that right now currently just includes a long list of potential bicycle and pedestrian projects. And this will help us better prioritize what are the most effective projects to pursue in the rural areas based on, again, a limited funding resource that will be available. The Regional Transit Partnership is a little bit different than the other transit programs that I just mentioned, because it is funded specifically and has been identified as a priority by the City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County. So that's where our funding comes from. Again, this is really intended to provide a lot more collaboration and communication among different agencies that are operating within this field, but they all have pretty distinctive purposes. And so one of the challenges is to make sure that there's communication and that there's not too much overlap to, again, make sure that we are using the resources as efficiently as possible and is providing as comprehensive a service as is possible. We've just wrapped up a feasibility study on transit expansion opportunities with Albemarle County. And one of the exciting things that we're looking forward to upcoming is the potential implementation of a demonstration project. Basically, through this study, we identified a couple areas where there is an opportunity to expand transit service using microtransit, or another word for that might be on-demand transit. And so this is basically a transit service that looks a lot like Lyft or Uber, something like that, where it's on call. You have an app or a phone number you call, and if you're in a specific service area, you can utilize that transportation service. It's a little bit of an improvement over Uber or Lyft in that it's a flat fee structure, so it's not going to be demand-based what you pay for it, and there will also be better guaranteed arrival times. So you know you're not going to have to wait more than whatever the specified period is. So we're hopeful that funding for that will come through and that we'll be able to move forward on that demonstration project. And the other really big thing that we're working on right now is looking at the overall transit service through the area. What are the opportunities to improve that in the future through the regional transit vision plan, where we've been working with a consultant team. They're developing both what we call a constrained service operations scenario, which is assuming a certain level of revenue that will be generated, that will be provided, and suggesting what the most important improvements to the transit service system would be based on that funding scenario. And then they're also developing an unconstrained vision system, which is, you know, wave your magic wand, funding is no issue. This is what the system could be with unlimited resources. So we'll be conducting some public engagement on that coming up in the next month or two. As a follow-up to wrapping that study up next year, we're going to be looking at a governance study. So this is really looking at what is the appropriate organizational structure and what are the appropriate mechanisms that we could use to potentially implement some of the recommendations that come out of this regional transit vision plan. And then finally, I want to spend just a second letting you know about our rideshare program. This is really a program to reduce traffic congestion and increase mobility throughout the service area. So it decreases the strain on the transportation system when we support alternatives to single occupancy vehicle use, things like carpooling, van pooling, transit use, using active transportation like bicycling, walking, those kinds of things, and even telecommuting. One thing I really want to highlight is that this is an ongoing program. A lot of it is marketing and information sharing to make people aware of this, but we also provide a guaranteed ride home program, which is if you are somebody who regularly commutes using a non-traditional single occupancy vehicle form of transportation, we offer vouchers available to anybody who basically has an emergency and needs to get home. So if you're carpooling with someone and your kid gets sick and you need to go home and get them, you can use a taxi service, or we'll reimburse you for an Uber or a Lyft or something like that, so you never feel like you're stuck without a way home. So those are just a couple of highlights from the programming for the PDC, and then I think we're turning it over to Sean to help facilitate some Q&A.
Thank you to Kevin and Sandy. We will now move into the question and answer period, and it looks like there's some good questions in the chat already. You in the audience will have the opportunity to ask some questions, and please raise a hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you so that people who are watching on the Zoom can also hear what you're saying. Those participating in the Zoom, please submit the questions in the toolbar, and there are already some questions there. I'd like to start with one question, if I could have the prerogative. I've got some numbers I need to pull up here. We talked about the long-range transportation, but a factor to throw into that is, of course, the population. The population of this area is expected to increase quite a lot. Albemarle County's population projections, according to the Weldon Cooper Center, are about by 2045, expecting 146,000 people in Albemarle. In the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission area itself, let me bring up the number here, because 322,000 by 2045. That's all those areas. So my first question to you guys is, are we going to be ready transportation-wise to accommodate a larger population? And either one of you can go first.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't know that we're ever going to be completely ready, but we're certainly working on through our planning processes on identifying the most critical needs first and making sure that we're focusing our limited resources on places where there are existing or anticipated both congestion concerns in order to improve capacity, but also on safety concerns. And that's looking not just at existing conditions, but also on projected future conditions. One thing I think is really important to keep in mind is that we're going to have to be a little bit creative about really making sure that we're meeting the demand for transportation services and making sure people are well connected to the places that they need to go, and thinking beyond just your traditional roadway improvements. One conversation that I've had recently with some of our VDOT officials has been that the percentage of our overall transportation funding that needs to go just towards maintaining our existing system is becoming a greater and greater portion of our overall budget, which means there's less and less funding available to make improvements to the transportation system itself. So we really need to be looking at what are other opportunities to efficiently and effectively use our transportation dollars, including things like expanding transit, including active mobility and good sidewalk and bicycle networks to create an alternative opportunity for people to commute using alternative means. And then also I think we need to talk about broadband and expanding broadband, because there's a lot more opportunity for people to work from home, that jobs are becoming less and less dependent on being in a specific location. And so we're also working on, we recently received, the PDC recently received a grant to implement broadband, high-speed internet broadband throughout the rural areas over the next 3 or 4 years. So I think those are all opportunities to think about how we can be creative about our transportation planning beyond just trying to build ourselves out of the capacity concerns that we may experience. Do you want to add anything?
I don't know if I really have a lot to add to that because she covered a lot. But one thing I will point out is that while all these, like she talks about transit and bike ped opportunities, those are great ways that we can try and reduce that demand on our transportation system. But the other big thing that we've got to keep in mind is that connection between land use and transportation. As I pointed out, we have, in Albemarle County, 5% of our land is in the development area, and we try and focus most of our development right to there. I think being able to put people closer to their jobs and to their daily needs so that they don't have to drive and they don't put that larger stress on our overall transportation system is going to be key. As she said, we're not really going to be able to build ourselves out of the transportation needs that we have. We're already trying to catch up. That's what we're doing right now, is playing catch up. And as I pointed out, we don't really build new roads. We're not expecting to build any more bypasses. What we're trying to do is make the system that we have as efficient as possible.
Well, thanks. If there's no question from the audience, we can rove the microphone over to the person. Or is it?
Hi there.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I think this is a question for Kevin. I'm wondering if you have a timeline connected to the Eastern Ave connector in Crozet and also the roundabout at the 240-250 split in Crozet.
Timelines are difficult.
I figured.
So the roundabout at 240 and 250, that project actually was funded a bunch of years ago, like 3 years ago, I think. And there were delays getting that done. That's a project that's being managed by VDOT. But I did speak to the project manager, and they believe that they're going to be able to get that moving again in the spring to finish up the design. Usually design still takes around a year to about that. So if we were able to start in spring of 2023, I think that you would probably see construction 4 is what we'd be expecting. But they're kind of, like I said, I talked to the project manager and he's still a little bit reticent about giving those specific timelines right now. But it is supposed to be moving forward again very shortly. With Eastern Avenue, the county actually put in a lot of our own local funding to get started on the design. We're already at 30% design for that. And like I said, we did get that about $8.5 million from the state. So I believe we're going to just keep moving right through design right now. And that $8.5 million is supposed to come online around 2025. So if we can get design ready by that time, and then when we get that funding, we'd be able to move right into construction. I think you're probably looking at a 2026 construction for that one. And I know it is frustrating to hear these really long timelines, but every project we do takes this long. They're always so many years out. I started at Albemarle County 6 years ago, and the first projects that I got funded 6 years ago are just getting completed right now. So that's the timeline we often look at with these.
I think we have one over here.
So with development constrained primarily to the 5% of Albemarle County, when we get projects going, they seem to go off the rails often when community members come to public comment and voice concerns about traffic congestion. So I'm curious what your groups are doing to help alleviate those concerns and try to get out ahead of them, because we know that we need development, we need housing, it's coming. So how can we help prevent these projects from not moving forward because of traffic concerns?
Yeah, I think Kevin and I are going to come from different perspectives, because one side of this is the specific site development that you'll be able to speak to. Or I think that was one of the goals that was identified with the MPO, though, as far as the public engagement leading into our smart scale project, is to make sure that any project that really needed to have additional community engagement, that there was an opportunity for that to happen up front. Not necessarily that we could mitigate all the concerns from the community, but at least the elected officials who needed to support those had the information and knew what the concerns were from the community and felt comfortable that they were able to make decisions considering all of those concerns. So from a regional perspective, I think it's being really thoughtful about how we're engaging the communities and the planning process, and making sure that we're building that engagement and that feedback opportunity into our project planning processes.
Yeah, Sandy makes a great point there that, we're not going to be able to make everybody happy that when they see this development coming in. But the important thing is to make sure that our elected and appointed officials, the Board of Supervisors in Albemarle County and the Planning Commission, have the right information to make the right decisions. So when we present to them, like say, if a large redevelopment comes in for a rezoning, we have them model that transportation impact that we think it's going to have, and we present that information to them in a factual basis, and then let them make the decision, and hope that they're not swayed by just views of the community that may not always be entirely based in fact, but more in feeling. And some of the things I point out and I try and make sure that our elected officials understand is, and the citizens, is one, that if we say no to development, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have transportation impacts. That say a no to development actually can cause more transportation impacts in a lot of situations, because those people that would have lived right there in the center of town now have to live in Greene County, and then they have to travel all that extra distance to get in. So they're having a greater impact on the transportation system. So that's one of the issues I always try and make sure that they understand. And then I think it's just getting through the, like I said, the immediate reaction from the public that any development is bad. I think most of them are what we need, and they're really trying to support the economy in our region.
Question back here in the back.
Yes, thank you. I had a question about the 240, 250 roundabout, and if that is expected to have any impact on 250. Like, I'm thinking about a few years ago at this meeting, the VDOT representative said that that intersection from Owensville, or it's not an intersection, but Owensville turning on to 250, someone had asked if there would ever be anything done there. And they said that research had shown it would actually be more dangerous to put in a light or do something there, that there would be more accidents, but that they continue to study it on a regular basis. And I feel like I do see like license plates there or signs of accidents. And I'm curious, A, if that's continued to be studied, and B, if there's like a continuous flow of traffic from the roundabout, if that is going to impact that spot, and also the yellow blinking light from Tillman onto 250.
Sure. Interestingly, I just heard from one of our supervisors about that Owensville 250 intersection last week. So somebody did bring it up and I had an opportunity to look back into it. We did have a study that was performed by VDOT in 2018 that looked at that intersection and came up with some potential improvements, including a roundabout there. Imagine that. So it is something that we do continue to look at. And when I pulled the information, I did notice that despite the fact that it is a difficult intersection to get through, we still don't see a really high level of traffic accident or traffic crashes out there. So for that reason, it hasn't jumped up onto that high on that priority list. I think that was way down in the like 70s the last time we updated it. And I think what we see there is, well, for one, when you have an intersection that appears dangerous, people approach it with a lot more caution. So you end up with less accidents. Also, I think a lot of the people that live in that area know that it's difficult to make that left from Owensville onto 250. And so they go up to Garth Road and take Garth Road into the city. And I'll just add that I agree with the VDOT representative in that if we were to put a light out there, I have a feeling we would see an increase in crashes, because wherever we put a light in the region, we see an increase in crashes after those. Lights are all of the most dangerous intersections that we have in the county are all signalized intersections. So yeah, that is a concern that we look at a lot. That her question was regarding whether or not when you have a roundabout, you have that more steady flow of traffic, and so in the intersection shortly after that, they might not have as many opportunities to get out of their intersection. And it all depends on the situation as to where that intersection is located. If it's far enough away, then that traffic will break up again. If it's really close, then that traffic tends to actually be moving really slow, and you're going to have a lot more opportunities. But there are chances that could make it more difficult to get out of other adjacent intersections.
It looks like we have time for one more question, and I
Sean,
think
we have a Zoom, we
Oh.
have a couple of Zoom
yes,
questions.
we have a couple Zoom questions. So let's go to those first.
Sure. Why are we not moving towards stronger mass transit like Roaring Fork Transit Authority in Aspen-Picton County or 2 other surrounding counties in Colorado? The population is smaller and it runs like an exceptional timepiece. Our land use policy has to change to improve transportation efficiencies. Current generative paradigms, thank you, generate 495 like systems we cannot build out. We need to think about.
Kevin told me I got to answer all the transit questions first, so I guess I'll start. Yeah, we're looking at that with our transit vision plan and looking at what we can do to improve transit. I think even though the population density or the population itself might lead to feeling like that could be an option. Really what it comes down to is the land use patterns and development patterns and how dense all of that development is. So not just the population itself, but the actual density of the population. The experts that we're working with have indicated that that's probably, we can look for things like bus rapid transit and some of those opportunities for improvement, but a lot of the land use is a little bit more spread out, a little less densely populated and densely concentrated. And so we're really going to have to look beyond just what has worked in other cities with those types of development patterns. Microtransit presents a really good opportunity because you don't have to make a lot of system improvements to the road infrastructure or the hard infrastructure itself in order to implement those. But then we're also looking at what we can do with funding that could be available. We don't have a huge budget for transit improvements right now. So we need to identify what funding is reasonable for a region to be able to support transit improvements. And that's part of the process we're going through right now with the vision planning and the upcoming governance study that we're hoping to undertake. Do you want to add anything regarding land use?
Well, I think that's all the time we have for the Q&A, but of course, if you want to hear about any of this, follow me. I write about this stuff and update it. So if you want to keep up to date, I'm available for questions afterwards as well. So thank you very much for you guys.
Kevin, Sandy, and Sean, we can't thank you enough for being here with us this morning. The information you have provided has been very beneficial for us as well as for us to share with our clients. Please note, Kevin and Sandy's presentations will be shared with the membership as well as this recording in Monday's news group e-letter. As I mentioned earlier, our area continues to grow, and the city of Charlottesville is no exception. Today, we have Chris Engel, Director of Economic Development of the city, to share some important updates. Chris, I hand the meeting over to you.
Well, thank you. It sounds like a big responsibility to have the meeting in my hands. But in any case, I'm Chris Engel, Director of Economic Development for the city. Glad to be here with you all today to provide a little bit of an update. First, I have a promise. There's no roundabouts in this presentation. But if we run into a problem, we're going to solve it with a roundabout. Second is a disclaimer. I'm not an economist, but I was asked for an economic update. So I will share some numbers with you that we use to kind of track activity in the city, and particularly during the pandemic, that have been important for us. So with that said, we will move along because I've got about 10 minutes. And of course, at the end, we'll have time for all your prickly questions about the city and what we're doing with the Dewberry Hotel or the Belmont Bridge or parking or all the fun stuff that we haven't gotten to yet today. Anyway, there's our beautiful city. Just a few updates. Unemployment obviously had a big spike there during the pandemic. We have bounced back. Our rate now is about 2.4% unemployment in the city, which is very, very low. Any lower, we kind of get worried that there's not enough available workforce. And of course, that is the issue right now, as almost anybody knows who's in the service industry. Finding folks is very difficult. And so you can see we had a huge spike there that has never been seen before, even back as recent as the last recession, in which we saw a spike. You'll also notice that we, being Charlottesville, is fairly insulated relative to the state and to the national impacts of unemployment. And that's largely due to the presence of the university that doesn't have a lot of kind of ups and downs with their hiring. So that kind of insulates us from the real severe shocks. We do see shocks, but we don't see them quite as severe. This is simply the employment versus unemployment. So this is year over year change of employment in the city and Virginia and the United States as well. Very similar item there where you see where 2020 Q1, you see a huge dip and we dipped significantly there, actually a little bit more than the state in the US, but we've bounced back with some additional hiring in the last year, which has been good to see. This just shows the industry mix for the city. And this is interesting in that about 30 to 40% of our economy is service related. And that saw the most impact during the pandemic, obviously, and those after effects are still occurring. Accommodation and food services, retail are the two biggest chunks of that. And we have a large hospitality industry here, restaurants as well. And those were significantly affected during the pandemic and are bouncing back at different rates. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. But this just shows a little bit of the breakdown of the type of industries that we have in the local area. And this just shows wages. We're a little bit above the state average typically. And the US average, but very close on all fronts. All wages have remarkably been growing, and that is a good sign. I'm going to move into some more city-specific data that we collect. Sales, meals, and lodging tax are some of the key indicators that we look at to gauge the health of the community, if you will. And sales tax is certainly the first one we look at. It's the largest one. The city brings in about $12 million a year on average from sales tax. We get 1% of the 5%. The rest goes to the state. So in terms of order of magnitude, that's the type of volume that we're looking at with sales tax. But you can certainly see the big dip in the gray line there from the pandemic, April of 20. And then it started to slowly climb back up. And then in 21, the yellow line, you see some gyrations all the way through the year as we were trying to figure out, people were trying to figure out how to deal with things and shutdowns and startups and whatnot. But then in 22, the blue line you see is far and above almost all indicators previously. So sales tax has been the least affected of these revenues. And some of that has to do with some changes that happened at the state level with a court case called the Wayfair case, which basically said that online sales have to be recorded in the jurisdiction in which the person is when they purchase them. So we started receiving sales tax revenue that we previously were not receiving. So in general, all localities are starting to see more. That pushed ours up a little bit, and we're seeing that here. But we're also seeing just enhanced activity during the pandemic. A lot of people spent more on items that are subject to sales tax for a period of time, and we're seeing some of that show up in these numbers as well. Meals tax is another item that suffered significantly, and you can see the gray line just drop almost to the floor of this graph here in March of 20, and then barely pick back up through the remainder of that year. The yellow in 21, you see it kind of more normal, and then of course in 22, it is significantly in most months above where we've seen it before, so almost back on track, if you will. Lodging tax was significantly hit as well by the pandemic, as you can imagine. The gray line there almost bottoms out to 100,000, which is unheard of in this community, at least in the past 15 years. It did bounce back fairly nicely in 21, and then 22, it's above all previous years on this chart anyway. And I mentioned the hospitality industry, and this community saw a hotel boom, if you will, a few years back. The city added about 500 hotel rooms in about a year and a half. And this community has seen investment in that area because the numbers around lodging have been so strong. Developers look for occupancy rates that are very high, and we were about a 72% average pre-pandemic for occupancy for a year, and that is about 10 points higher than most of the state and other places. So that's the reason we saw some of that investment. There's a lot of jobs associated with the hospitality industry. And so obviously during the pandemic, there was a significant impact from that, but it is coming back. Weddings are coming back. Visitation is coming back. The thing that's not coming back as quickly is the business travel that we did see some of here. We hope to see that pick up again, but that is slower to come back. The kind of weekend visitors are happening, but the business travel is not happening at the level that it used to happen. And that still just kind of needs to shake out. But overall, we're at about 92% of where we were pre-pandemic with regard to hospitality and travel. So not quite 100%, but we are getting there. So that is good news. A couple other kind of very city-specific indicators that we track, building permits. This is the value of building permits over the last decade. And if you were to take all these numbers and add them up, and I did this the other day, $1.75 billion of investment in the little old city of Charlottesville in the last decade is pretty significant. And so that's home remodels, new homes, commercial, that's everything all put together, but a significant investment in 10 square miles of a small city. And we look most specifically at the orange on the graph. This is commercial, and from an economic development perspective, we are here to encourage job creation, capital investment, employment opportunities in and around the city. And so we look specifically at the orange most closely, but the residential is important as well. Homes are where jobs go to sleep at night, so that's important. And even though our focus is on the job, you know, the overall community and how they get around, back to the transportation piece, is important as well. But you see some pretty significant jumps here in 19 and 20 strong, 21 is strong in the orange. I have a graphic here, a visual that will explain a little bit more of that in a second. But on average, we have about $75 to $80 million in commercial investment annually, which is a pretty good number for a city of our size. This next one just simply shows the numbers of permits associated with those values. And you can kind of see how they play out over the years. Not quite as exciting. This is exciting. This is one I will spend a little bit of time on, but a nice visual aerial taken from a drone looking to the west, northwest of the downtown area. And I'll just start with number one on the left side, and that's the Cork Hotel. That was the final hotel in the hotel boom that happened in about 2017, 2018. They opened or tried to open at the time that COVID arrived, and they had a little start and stop there, but they are now fully opened and have a restaurant and rooftop bar and some very nice amenities. Number two there is the Apex Plaza, which you've probably seen or heard about. It is the home to Apex Clean Energy, a very fast-growing alternative energy firm downtown. It's been around about only 12 years, and they're now a little over 350 employees. They're the key tenant in this building, occupying the top 3 floors. If you weren't aware that this building is uniquely constructed in that it's a tall wood timber construction, which is the first in the state and maybe the tallest on the East Coast at the moment. So used a lot of new and different kind of building techniques, some of which took a little while for our building folks to get comfortable with, but in any case, there it is. It's a huge new building. It's got internal parking, a little bit of retail on the first floor that's yet to materialize, but the office space is largely being fitted now and occupied. Item 3, towards the back there is Dairy Central, which is new and different for Charlottesville, and then it has a food hall, which was the kind of new fun piece to the renovation there. But they also built 50,000 square feet of Class A office on the back of that space, and they're now building 240 apartment units that are, I believe, occupying now. So that was part of this kind of Class A boom that we're seeing now. And they were actually first to market in early 2020 with their 50,000 square feet. Building number 4 there is the Code building, which if you've been downtown in the last 2 years, you've seen it coming out of the ground. This is where the ice park used to be. It's a beautiful facility. It has amazing amenities. You should stop in and take a peek. It is largely occupied as well. All of these Class A buildings are 90% or more occupied with tenants, most local, but some new to the area. And then finally, number 5 there is a building called 323, based on its address of 323 2nd Street. And that building is complete and occupying with tenants doing their upfit now. It's also occupied above the 90% level. So all in all, if you take 2, 3, 4, and 5 and add them together, 500,000 square feet of Class A office space was added to this market in about 18 months. That statement will probably never be issued again because it's unbelievable that it happened, and it happened, frankly, during the pandemic. The Apex building actually started after the pandemic arrived. The other 3 were in some form or fashion started. So, you know, they had the opportunity to say, wait a second, this is not going to work. And they didn't. And I think that's a testament to the market and the strength of the market and the fact that people want to be here for purposes of working in and around downtown. So good story there altogether. This is my final slide, and this really just kind of gives a few things to kind of think about as we continue to remove ourselves from the pandemic and adjust to it. But as I said at the beginning, I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to get into inflation, supply chain, and interest rates too much, but suffice it to say that they impact your work, they impact investment levels and what people are going to do with their capital. And so we kind of have to watch that and see how that plays out. The impact of remote work is still being kind of watched very closely by a lot of folks, and we're going to see how that plays out in Charlottesville as well. Many companies are going to hybrid type opportunities, and we'll see if that reduces their overall real estate footprint or not. It might. It may just mean they program the office a little differently. Most folks downtown are coming back in some form or fashion, at least the larger employers at this point. That impacts, if they come back or not, impacts the service sector, as you can imagine, with the restaurants and coffee shops and others. If there's fewer workers, then there's going to be fewer opportunities for them to survive. So there's going to be a little bit of a shakeout based upon how people come back to work or not. And we'll see how that impacts downtown. And, you know, downtowns are always changing, cities are always changing. So we would expect this to happen, pandemic or not, in some form or fashion. I think the pandemic has just kind of made some things happen a little quicker and a little more, abruptly for some. So another thing we're looking at. And then, of course, labor force participation is kind of something that nobody can explain. Where do all the workers go? And, some of them are starting to come back, but they're not back fully at levels that they were pre-pandemic. So I have no solution for that. Not sure a roundabout will help or not, but maybe we can solve it somehow. But in any case, I've probably gone more than you wanted to hear, and I think that's it. Yeah. So happy to answer questions that you have. I might be able to answer. If not, I'm happy to head off. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Chris's presentation will also be included in Monday's News Group e-newsletter. Next, I'd like to welcome Roxanne Carter-Johnston, Chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, to the stage.
Thank you, Pam. I'm happy to be here with you this morning. Before I get started, I want to be sure everyone knows what DEI stands for, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you've never heard this acronym before, we encourage you to learn more and join the conversation. DEI is playing a much larger role than ever in our lives and in our interactions at work, school, community, and at each realtor association level, local, state, and national. I want us to look at the National Association of Realtors, Virginia Realtors, and CAAR demographics. This information, which is provided by the NAR database M1, provides you a better idea of who we are collectively. Let's look at NAR. Quick highlights. 24% of members are in the 50 to 59 age range. 57.3% of members are female, and 80.5% are Caucasian. Next, Virginia Realtors. 25.3% of members are in the 50 to 59 age range. 58.4% of members are female, and 83.9% are Caucasian. Now we look at CAAR. 23.4% of members are in the 50 to 59 age range. 53.6% of members are female, and 95.4% are Caucasian. I don't know about you, but those percentages speak volumes, don't you think? CAAR's DEI efforts first started in 2020 with a project team. After reviewing important information, such as these demographics of the Realtor associations and how it compares to the community demographics that we serve, we knew we had a magnitude of work ahead of us. So the official council was formed in 2021. While you see our council on the screen, I would like these members to stand at their seats to be recognized. Ben Reeves, Vice Chair. S. Lisa Herndon, Board Liaison and CAAR President-elect. Janice O'Hara, Shannon Thomas, and Tom Woolfolk. And I just have to add, they show up. Together, we established a vision, mission, and value propositions to guide our activities and resources to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our association. The work of the council is to deliver education, training, and opportunities for you to be better, listen, ask questions, and understand from one another. In 2021, CAAR established a collaborative partnership with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Rideshare Chapter of Richmond, on 4 events. We were able to obtain a $5,000 National Association of Realtors diversity grant and host Dr. James Saunders, the author of Urban Renewal and the End of Black Culture in Charlottesville, Virginia, in a virtual and engaging session. Next, we had Leslie Frazier, Senior Vice President of Community and Industry Relations of Virginia. Realtors deliver how to have difficult conversations around race, or any differences for that matter. In December of last year, we delivered the NAR at Home with Diversity certification course with instructor Margaret Wheeler, as well as an engaging broker panel discussion on video and audio surveillance issues and love letter implications. If you missed any of these sessions, please visit the CAAR YouTube channel and watch them. At the end of last year, our council created a DEI resources webpage where you can find a comprehensive list of recommended books, videos, presentations, and more. This page is being updated as we come across new and helpful resources, so please visit it often. In line with the new CAAR strategic plan, the DEI Council is developing awareness of the real estate profession through varied and frequent communication directed to underrepresented populations. In March of this year, we participated in the PBCC 37th Job Fair. We communicated the value of the realtor, promoted the realtor profession as a career choice, and shared how realtors are involved in the community. Our presence and interactions were extremely impactful, and we look forward to participating in similar community opportunities. If you wish to connect with the DEI Council, please email us at dei@caar.com. We want to make an open and safe environment to ask questions and learn from one another. Be on the lookout for sessions throughout the year to help you grow and be mindful on how to speak, behave, and treat one another. It's more important than ever for us to do this together. Thank you.
Roxanne, thank you. And thanks to the DEI Council for all of your efforts that you have made and continue to make within the CAAR community and within our larger community as well. Tremendous work. I know one of the recommended trainings on the DEI resources webpage is the NAR Fair Haven training. I'm curious how many people in this room have completed Fair Haven? Wonderful. What a large group. That's awesome. Completing NAR Fair Haven is one great way for you to learn how to recognize violations in fair housing. And I also want to say that it is probably the best NAR training that I have ever taken. It's really engaging. You'll learn things about yourself and also important things about fair housing. So I encourage everyone to take it. It takes about an hour and it is just a great interactive training. Please encourage your colleagues and peers to complete the free and impactful simulation. Next, I would like to invite the CAAR Foundation Chair, John Seidler, to the podium.
Good morning, and thank you, Pam. CAAR has been a supportive partner for many nonprofits over the years, and I have no doubt that many of you watching have participated in a CAAR fundraiser or activity benefiting a local nonprofit. As you may recall, CAAR created the Workforce Housing Fund in 2004, which is administered by PHA. Workforce Housing Fund provided down payment assistance and loans for home ownership to make it more affordable for teachers, police, officers, nurses, and firefighters. After much discussion at the board level, it was determined that CAAR would better serve the community by sunsetting, the Workforce Housing Fund and creating our own 501c3 nonprofit. The CAAR Foundation received its official IRS letter last October, and in December received its first donation of $71,000 funds from CAAR. The mission of the foundation is to be an effective mechanism for realtors to donate time, talent, and resources to impact, sustain, and support community initiatives. The purposes of the foundation shall be exclusively charitable and educational. The CAAR Foundation Board of Directors is working closely with the Center for Nonprofit Excellence to create the pillars of the foundation that will keep the nonprofit vibrant and a long-lasting contribution to our entire community. We are quickly coming to the realization that our first donation from CAAR will be mostly used to get the foundation up and running, including hiring an executive director. The position will be promoted in the coming months beyond the outlook for this. While we have not yet put forward a formal call for contributions to the foundation, we have been approached by many CAAR members who wish to contribute in 2022. We will be grateful and humbled by your financial support as we grow the foundation. If you are interested in contributing, you may find a donation form, or any of the members of the foundation board can provide you with one. We take cash, checks, and credit cards. We also take your time. If you have any questions about the foundation, I'll be glad to take them afterwards. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We appreciate your leadership in getting this foundation up and running. CAAR has a lot of education, community, and volunteer activities and events, including the Tuesday, May 17th, Paper Shred Day, which has been scheduled. So please check the CAAR education and events calendar often and take advantage of all the things that are offered with your membership. Before we close today's meeting, I would like to congratulate Michael DiBettito, who earned his Graduate Realtor Institute, or GRI, designation. That's a tremendous accomplishment. To conclude this morning's meeting, I would like to welcome the following new Realtor members. In addition, I would like to welcome the following new affiliate members listed on your screen. Thank you again for joining this morning's meeting. We will take a general membership meeting hiatus from late spring through the summer. Our next meeting will be the Annual Development and Economic Summit. That'll be held on Thursday, September 8th from 2 to 5 o'clock p.m. right here at the Hillsdale Conference Center. I hope everyone has a great day today, and this meeting is hereby adjourned.